part of the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Producing While Asian. I'm your host, Don Mike, and this week's episode is with a very good friend of mine, Alex Grubbs, who is based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He is a marketing and branding and media relations specialist and expert, and he's also a content creator. He has shows that exist on platforms such as Clubhouse and Kumu USA, and he is, and I call him an influencer in his own right. And I'm so excited to share this conversation with you because he has a lot to say, especially if you are somebody who is looking to explore more in the social media spheres of the world. So without any further ado, here's our episode with Alex Grubbs of Producing While Asian. I hope you enjoy. Hey, Alex, thank you so much for joining me today on Producing While Asian. It's so exciting to have you and to talk to you outside of our normal work together in Pittsburgh. So how are things going? How are you surviving right now? How's life?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. I'm so excited for this conversation. We have so many different conversations, but it's cool to put it in this type of setting. Life is life, work is work. There's a lot of things, and it's just, you have to take it day by day. That's really what it is. Especially if you're in a creative world, you literally have to take it day by day.
For sure.
Plan stuff out, of course, but you have to just, again, take it day by day.
Yeah, it's really hard, especially with uncertainty and, what's not guaranteed every day for us in terms of our career path. So for our audience members who may not have heard of you before, tell them a little bit about you and your professional background and kind of how you arrived at where you're at today.
Yeah, so just generally for me, I initially went to Point Park University for my bachelor's in broadcast reporting. So I really wanted to be a TV journalist. I was dead set on that for years. I did pivot out of that path. When I was finishing up my degree, I was looking for, jobs, of course. It was like, where am I going to be a multimedia journalist? I was just looking everywhere. And then I got offered a master's degree. So I got my master of business administration, pivoted into the PR, social media field. So right now I work for a social media agency, working with a bunch of different clients across the entertainment field, the tech field, HR. There's a bunch of different things where we develop their social media strategies, we implement them, helping people and companies with their branding, consulting different people, a lot of project management, working with our design team and our clients, it's just a bunch of different stuff. Something new every day, writing something else. Low-key ghostwriting for some other people, which I'm good for them, but I wrote that. Won't say who, but shout out to them, though. I actually appreciate some of them. Good rapport with them. And then in my spare time, it's just, what is it? We work together on the FAAP board, the Filipino American Association of Pittsburgh, communications officer, so there's a lot of content creation. I'm really trying to create content plans right now for us because we do need to showcase what we're doing here in Pittsburgh. We're here, Filipinos are here, we've been here. And to me, it's important that we have something like this because we need to show people that, we do amazing things, but I think just generally as Asians, we don't like to assert ourselves and show the results. We're just we're doing it, we like it, but no, you need to see that we are doing it. We're here and we want you to join, and we're just dope people doing dope things. And then I guess I'm on Clubhouse in Kumu. If you know me, I'm half Filipino, the half Filipino, depends on what app you're on specifically. And I did a lot of interesting stuff and collabing with a bunch of different influencers and just regular people who hop on those apps. So with Clubhouse, worked with Bahay Kubo, which is their OG Filipino club there. We had a weekly show called Am I Filipino AX Enough? We really dived into what our identity is across the board, whether it's language, appearance, location, just a bunch of different identifiers and where they intersect. Especially for me, I'm multiracial. Filipino, of course, white, and then my grandmother on my dad's side is actually half Indian. So there's a bunch. I get double the Asian, so I guess that's awesome in that sense. So represent all day. So I say I'm half Filipino, but I'm not half white. Just putting it out there
Yeah.
because I always get that. They're
Yeah.
like, "Well, you're half white." No, I'm not. I'm not. Put respect
Sure.
on my grandmother. She's half Indian. um, and also on Kumu USA, I'm doing a bunch of things, actually collaborating with Kumu USA, the folks there, and with One Down Media. And shout out to them, like Leo and Tessa Obea. They are amazing Filipinos doing amazing stuff within our community and on that app. I do Sing Me to Sleep on there. It started on Clubhouse kind of as a joke, but we moved it into Kumu, and basically it's an open forum. We invite people to sing, play instruments, read poems, whatever they're comfortable doing. That's really just the vibe. And we've met a lot of cool people. You could literally be someone who's just, I'm comfortable only singing in my bedroom and I've never sang with anyone to anyone before. Or we've had people who are on like The Voice or went on tours and stuff. And doing so it's a great mix of people. Not on Clubhouse there's a lot more. Kuma, we're kind of getting our, ground moving, and shout out to my friends King and Zasha. They're also partially Pinoy, so they're part of that. We just put that stuff together, and we brought in my Filipino AX and up to Kumu as well. So just again talking about identity, what I really like about that app, it is a Filipino app, so we get to be with our Filipinos. It's like giving back, but we
Yeah.
have a space where we could just talk. We don't need to worry about some random coming in here and just trying to take up the space. Of course, there's non-Filipinos on the app, but there's just the basis of that app is Filipino. So it's lovely to just be there with everyone. And King and Zasha still do stuff with them, and my friend Josh, who's over in the UK. Put that stuff together. And to
Nice.
me, it's just important. I feel like it overlaps in everything. Because even myself, kind of going on tangent, but kind of history and everything together, is I feel Filipino American. I am Filipino American. I would put that at the top identifier for me because it intersects in everything that I do. I can't not work somewhere without being Filipino. I can't be me without being Filipino. Can't walk down the street without being othered. And I'm Filipino. Even if I may not traditionally look like a Filipino, like I still am. So that's
Mhm.
just where I'm at. And it all comes together.
Awesome.
A lot
Right.
of
Right. And
social media, a lot of stuff, and it's literally what I do all day. I sit on social media.
yeah. So I would, well, in my personal opinion, I define anybody who's under 30 as an influencer because I'm old.
We
But
are
the
now.
other thing is I consider you to be a content producer, and which is why I invited you onto the show. And so like I love that your kind of professional background is like a lot of things. It's very diverse. You have a lot of different skill sets. And so talk to us a little bit about how you kind of melded these two worlds together, right? Because like on one side you're a marketing professional, on the other side you're now a content producer in terms of Kumu and Clubhouse and all of the social media work that you do, especially with the Filipino American Association of Pittsburgh. You're our communications officer, so you have a lot of say in kind of what our digital content looks like. So kind of talk to us about how you kind of marry those two sides of you together and kind of how one influenced the other in happening, kind of
Oh,
how you went,
mhm.
how you kind of flowed into being part of those circles on Kumu and Clubhouse using, kind of your professional day job life.
Yeah, I think this all stems from me going to school for broadcasting specifically. From there, I feel like growing up, I didn't have the confidence or even the resources to really dig deep into these kind of stuff. Like I played around with instruments and stuff like that, like cool. I think when I first started, I got involved in my school newspaper in high school. And I think that was literally it. I think people don't realize that a lot of the stuff that we see comes from strong writing. Like everything, whether it's scripted or non-scripted, everything is from writing. We have to put together what this plan is going to be, what this show's going to be, what the script's going to be, how we're going to put anything together. That's where it starts. So from there, got into TV. Even in college, I co-produced our morning show, even co-hosted. So that was a lot of combination everything on camera. I wrote the scripts. I put together the show. Of course, I had help with my other co-producers and all that, and finding talent, because that's another thing too. You need to get the people there. So that's where that kind of started. And I really love taking photos. I think I've always loved doing it. And my grandma actually gave me my first camera when I was like 16. It was like a Canon camera. like a very real like camera. So I kind of like went from there. And then I feel like from when I grew up, my teenage years were like in the early 2010s. So for me, we were just in social media, not the way social media is now, but as these apps and these websites and forums were developing, we were there. We were on Facebook when it popped up. We got on Instagram when it popped up, Snapchat, when we had Vine at one point, and then TikTok is here. There's
Oh,
always some new
Vine.
app coming up. I know Vine. Was watching Vine compilations the other day. I love it. But yeah, so you were kind of that was already there, present in my life. And then, when I went to grad school, I worked in the International Student Services like office at Point Park University that funded my degree, so that I worked with them as a whole
Hey.
agreement with that. So I did some social media there, but because I did photography stuff and videography stuff, I got involved with the Public Relations Society of America, PRSA, Pittsburgh, as their multimedia lead. I'm just taking photos. If you come to any FAAP event, you'll probably see me with a camera. That's just who I am. Like anywhere I go, I carry my backpack, I have my camera, I'm ready to go. So I'll have that with me. And I started going to those events, shooting it. Then I became the multimedia lead. And that's when I really started, being part of this social media world in a different way. Of course, I've dabbled with it in college because we had to upload our stuff. We had to put our reels together. We had to make sure everything was together there. But that's where we're doing specific content creation. And being around those professionals, I was like, okay, this is the field I want to at least start in, because I feel like there's a lot that overlap. And, I feel like for our creatives, there's a lot of business that comes in with creativity. You can be creative all
Mhm.
you want, but you need to have the business side to hold it together. And I feel like, at least for Asians and Filipinos, like we know how to do business best. So why can't we marry the two together? So coming to now where I'm at, where I work as a social media marketing professional, there's so many overlap of stuff. I look at content creation differently, not only in a scope. When I mean scope, I mean the scope of work. I'm talking about financially how we could go about that, but putting an agenda together, making sure that you are looking at the data from the stuff you're doing. Data is 100% important. It sounds so boring, but that's how you get gauged as an influencer. I'm not that
Yeah,
important as an
it's true.
influencer, but I could easily go on in someone's Instagram and do a spot engagement rate without having many things. Of course, you have the option to hide your likes, but you have your likes, comments, and followers. I could do your engagement rate real quick, and that's what a lot of people do. And actually, for influencer work, when you're looking for influencers for different clients, that's exactly what you do too. You're like, let me look at their Instagram real quick. Oh, they have an engaged following. Some people can have 130,000 followers, and I've seen it, but their engagement rate is so bad that why would you want to, just because they have the follow, like the reach, doesn't mean
Right.
that they're having people being part of it. So it all marries together. And I think what's interesting about my job is we get 20% time to play around with these apps and be like, oh, this is a new app. I'm going to go play around with this. And I did that. I did that with Clubhouse a lot, doing stuff during the day, during my job, and even Kumu. Not like Kumu USA, we do a lot of stuff at night just because it's more geared towards the Filipinos, like in the Philippines. But during the day, there's a lot of Filipino Americans and Filipino in Europe. So it all comes together. I know it's
Yeah.
all winded, but like you can't have one without the other. It's all married
Right.
together. That's how I feel, at least.
Totally. And so now, how do you decide, when you're content creating, how do you decide what is worthy of mentioning, of putting it out there, especially when, you can kind of predict how people are going to react to a certain extent, right? And I feel like a lot of engagement measurement obviously is done in hindsight, right? You
Yeah.
can't tell upfront, like, oh, we're going to get 20,000 likes on this thing. When you're in the mode of pre-producing the content before you even put it out there, how do you make those decisions? What are the things that help make you or point you in the right direction in terms of what you're specifically going to post, say for a client, or if you're deciding on what your episodes are going to be about on Kumu, on one of the shows that you're involved with?
Yeah, I think you have to pay attention to what's going on in the world too. I think that's the first thing. I know people don't think about that, but right now, and I don't want to make it too specific, but just with what's going on in Ukraine, we have to be on top of that. We have to be like, hey, look, some of the stuff that you've written before may not be or published before, it might be insensitive actually, and it may And it may not be insensitive in the fact that like what you're saying is wrong, but because people don't know about it and there's heightened emotions right now, someone can misinterpret what that means. So
Mhm.
we've actually had to do that for it, and I know a number of people are doing it for a number of clients. We had to put pauses on everything on social media because we had to reevaluate what's coming up, what can we put out, and especially when we're working with these big clients that are very global, they
Right.
have to figure out they have to figure out what statement they're going to put out. So if they're putting something out there that's controversial on their own, everyone else who works for them, we have to, hey, look, wait, should this firm be posting this? Should the C-suite person or a high-level person at this company say anything? Should they write something similar to that? There's a lot of things that we're going through right now just for that. So I think it all comes together. I think that's first, pay attention to what's going on. So, because anything could happen to be like, hey, this may sound great, but this happened yesterday. I don't know if this is right for us to be hosting this at this time.
Right.
Things like that. But I think on a general thing, it's keeping conversation. You have to have a pre-show meeting, regardless of what you do. It doesn't necessarily need to be the day of, depending if you have a routine down. But you have to have that. So we could, what are we hitting? How much time are we allotted for this? What are we trying to get? Everybody has a different way of measuring what's successful or not. So I think it's important to identify what that is. It could be just reach. We got these people, we can reach these people. It could be how many people view stuff. It could be how many people are reacting to it. It could be the engagement rate, how many people saw it versus who reacted to it, and putting those numbers together. I think you have to identify that first and foremost.
Gotcha.
And then I
Okay.
think you go ahead on some other stuff too. Just be like, and then you want to keep true to yourself. What do you want the design to look like? The aesthetic. How are we going to go about
Mhm.
it? And then go from there.
Yeah. And so it's a lot of decisions. I feel like in any sense of the word producer, whether you're a theater producer, music producer, content producer, you just have a lot of decisions to make. And a lot of it has to do with kind of like relationships and other people and people on your team and your client, if you are working for a client. Talk to us now. This question is going to be very unique in the way you answer it because it's traditionally answered in terms of like what people's job duties are. Because like when I ask this question of theater professionals and of music professionals, theirs is more around the idea of just like how much organizing they do. So for you, on the scale of 1 to producer, 1 being like not really at all like I dabble, but no, I don't consider myself a lead producer, or producer of like I am a producer, that's what I do, that's what I define myself as, or anywhere in between there. It's almost like a 1 to 10 scale. So on a scale of 1 to producer, where do you sit in your field, and why, or why not?
Yeah, I think for me, like if you encompass everything, I feel like I'm a 7
Mhm.
specifically, because
Sure.
but there's a range of stuff when it comes to putting stuff together for the FAAP. At least I feel like I'm at the top. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
have to be,
Right.
even if it's just conversation with like, hey, how are we going to put this together? I put together our newsletter. I'm at the
Mhm.
forefront of that. Even putting our social media together, I'm at the forefront of that. Even if I
Right.
have our president, talking to me like, hey, we should post this. It's like I have the final discernment. I mean, of course they do. They have to approve it, but I basically put everything together and go from there. For work,
Mhm.
it depends what account I'm on. It really
Right.
depends on what account I'm on,
For sure.
because some accounts it's just like I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, and others I'm like I take the lead on this. So
Mhm.
in putting that content together, we have weekly content meetings where we're like, hey, this is what we're at the top. And when you first start out, you may not have the confidence to be like, the loudest in the room, especially as Asians.
For
Again,
sure.
we don't like
Mhm.
to assert ourselves. There's a lot of layers to that, more specifically. But it's being like, hey, this is the content calendar we're putting for this week. Here's why I think this going here. And other people co-sign it, of course, but that's just telling them, I know this best. This
Sure.
is what we're going to do, and we're going to roll with it.
Gotcha.
We are excited to announce that we are joining the Press Play Podcast Network. The Krypton Report podcast is dedicated to all things Superman, Supergirl, and the planet Krypton. We discuss movies, TV, game, comics, and all things DC.
So join me, Tyler, with my co-host James and Jania.
So join us as we explore DC's multiverse.
Look for Krypton Report on all social media platforms.
Hi, I'm Alex Grubbs, and this is Producing While Asian.
So let's shift a little bit and talk about representation. You
Yeah.
know, I think for me on my end, like I produce because part of my personal mission is to make sure that I can open doors for people who look like me and who look like us to have a seat at the table, to have their opinions heard, to have their ideas respected, even, who knew, like to have, what our guess our cultural image or whatever be as authentic as possible. So in your line of work, how do you approach that challenge of making sure that A, representation matters, and B, that it's respected? Talk to us a little bit about your efforts in your professional journey, about how you kind of keep to that mission that you have, because you've already mentioned it several times. So let's dive into that. Talk to us about
Yeah.
your effort in kind of carrying that flag with the rest of us.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, of what identifier you go on, representation 100% matters. Whether it's on the big screen, which there's a lot of layers to that we could talk for hours about all of that. But even in the workplace, we need representation. We need someone there. I think it holds a lot of weight, and it's unfortunate that a lot of people of color have to hold this weight, being the only. And I think a lot of us have experienced being the only, even in places that are very populated with different identifiers or whatnot. They still have to navigate being the only in the workplace, and whether you're even if it's just you're a woman, or you might be trans, or depends what race you are, or if you're a mixture of different races, or wherever you fall on that the spectrum of things, or where they intersect together. For me, being in the room is 100%. That's what it is. I'm in the room, and I feel an anomaly. I feel like I'm an anomaly being here, because there's people who look like me. where are people who look like my family? Where are they at? And I remember I did an influencer campaign, I think it was last year, and we were looking for dads, and the team was having trouble finding Asian dads, like, on social media. I'm like, bro,
Wow.
like I literally, I was like, bro,
Yeah.
I just sourced like 10, real
Right.
quick. And I hate when people say, like, well, we can't find anything or anyone. It's like, we're here. You know what I mean? I could
Mhm.
easily list out a list of people and that. And I think that's where, being in the room holds a lot of value, because you can get the
Mhm.
people who look like you, or get the people, that deserve to be represented there. And it doesn't necessarily need to be like people who are Asian or Filipino or anything like that. You have to stand up and be like, oh, why don't we have any Black influencers here? Why don't we have any Black creatives here? Why don't we have any women here? Depending on where you're at in the creative field, that could be
Mhm.
something too. Where's the women in the C-suite? Where's the women in leadership? I think that's a conversation across the board. And the thing is, we're stronger together. We can't be like,
Mhm.
can't gatekeep. I'm here. Bye, y'all. You know what I mean? We can't be doing that.
Right.
It's so layered. It's so layered, depending, because there's so many different factors that go into it. But I
Mhm.
strongly believe representation matters. And again, while we're there, being person of color or whatever identifier you are, we're not the spokesperson of everyone who is part of that community. So for jobs too, they need to look out and be like, oh, just because you got the token, right,
Mhm.
doesn't mean you're
Right.
doing the work. It takes a lot of work to do diversity initiatives, be inclusive, even equitable. And I know that's a challenge where a lot of people are. But if you look at the communications field, I'll take the PR field for example. It's like it's at least less than 2%. It's like 2% of people are Asian. It's around that zone. And
Wow.
I'm like,
Yeah.
and even then, if you think about it, what is Asian anyway? There's so many
Mhm.
different backgrounds and cultures and countries that we don't even
Right.
know what Asians are represented there, and that's universal across the board.
Mhm.
So it's great to have Asian people in the room, but we don't even know what Asians are there too. So it's just
Right.
there's so much. There's so much there. I think about this stuff way too much. But
But you know
honestly, we
what?
just need to be
Someone
helping
has to.
hands. Yeah.
Right. Somebody has to think about it, because like if we all say, well, the other person should think about it, then no one thinks about it, because we're
Yeah.
shifting it off to the next person. So what's your opinion on the idea of going down what you mentioned earlier about being the only? There are some minority people that feel very offended by being the only, And then there are people who I feel very inspired by being the only to use that as an opportunity to pull other people up. So, it's almost like a catch-22. So what's your opinion on that, being where you are at your company and where you are when you're in your influencer circles on social media? Like, do you feel strongly that that's horrible when somebody is an only, or that it's an opportunity?
I think it's a combination. It's like it's great that, like, I would just say for me, it's great that I'm here, but there's still a
Mhm.
lot of work that needs to be done. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because for me, it's like, well, I'm Filipino, but again, I'm not full Filipino. So although I'm here as a Filipino, I don't represent all of us either.
Mhm.
So, and even in I guess the influencers I'm surrounded with are more predominantly within the Filipino community. But even then,
Mhm.
I find myself as someone who is, mestizo, looking. I always thought like we have to break the stereotypes and bring Filipino Americanness like to the
Yeah.
forefront here. But then I look in the Filipino community, not a lot of people that are mestizo are engaging with the community like I am, and a lot of my peers are. Whether it's just our Filipino American community, talking to people abroad, or even learning one of the languages, right? And
Mhm.
it's not a competition. You know what I mean? I don't think anyone's
Right.
less Filipino because they don't know the language, they don't wear whatever. If you're Filipino, you're Filipino. Period. It's like the
Mhm.
one drop
Right.
was a drop rule.
Right.
If you
One
got some
drop
blood
rule
in
that
you,
rules.
yeah,
Right. Right.
you're there to go. So yeah, I being the only, it's just it could feel it sucks at times because you're just like I don't know
Sure.
if someone has my back when it
Mhm.
goes to this, and then I feel like we have this look too. If you look in there, like if you're in a room with any person of color, like someone else, and someone says something stupid, like very stupid,
Right.
might be racial bias in there. There might be something in there. It's
Mhm.
that look. I don't know how to explain it. We know what it is. It's that look
Right.
we give
Right.
each other, that side eye where we're like, and you just know
Right.
like 50,000 things at the same, like you're both thinking 50,000 things and it's the same 50,000 things. And then you
Right. You're
laugh
just like,
about
they
it, talk
tried
about it
it.
later. I
You're,
know.
you're like, they tried it just now. Like,
Yeah.
okay.
It is an opportunity though, because when someone's
Mhm.
there, it should be ways to get more people involved. It doesn't
Right.
really matter because I know even on Kumo, there's a lot of black influencers there too. I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
should be
Mhm.
there. You know what I mean? Even if there's one, we shouldn't make them feel, they're less than. You're part of the. We want y'all here too. This is
Mhm.
like what Filipino culture should be, and how I feel is like we're welcoming of everyone. Like
Right.
everyone's a kababayan, everyone's a kapatid, everyone is all of that. And if we're going to be like that, we can't sit here and gatekeep at the same time. We can't. My thing is
Yeah.
we can't be wanting to be at the forefront and then gatekeep our stuff when other people want to be
Right.
part of it. But there has to be respect, of course. It's not appropriating. We can't be
Right.
appropriating
Yeah.
people.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
That's now between, because you're in both Clubhouse and
Yeah.
Kumu, relate that to the conversation about being the only, right? So Clubhouse was more like an open forum for like many different people, whereas Kumu is more like Filipino focused, right? Filipino founded and run. So what does the navigation of your identity look like on these two platforms? I know that on Clubhouse they have Philippine AOX specific spaces, but for the most part Clubhouse is everybody. But looking at Kumu, it's like Filipino first and then everybody else. So kind of, how do you manage that kind of almost different social media content producing personalities in a way, because in terms of different audiences, but like, how do you personally deal with that?
Yeah, I think for Clubhouse, it's interesting. It's like you have your community, but then there's so many other people, there's so many things to get into, and then you can accidentally run into the bad stuff on there.
Mhm.
I met so many people who weren't Filipino that were on Clubhouse too, and it's just like doesn't
Mhm.
make a difference to me necessarily. And I think it's great to navigate that space. And even though some of the rooms that I was doing was more Filipino centric, we were doing Sing Me to Sleep. It was about anybody. You know what I mean? Anyone was
Right,
rolling
right.
up to like sing or just read a poem, play an instrument, and I thought it was like great because we're a bunch of talented people, just
Yeah,
vibing, and it's just
yeah, it's awesome.
we're not caring about background, but we're embracing background at the same time because other people be like, "Can I sing a different language in here?" We're like, "Hell yeah, sing that different
Yeah.
language." And then we have someone from Japan that was always coming. And we're like, yes, sing to us, please. We might
Sure.
not know what you're saying, but like we're here to, be here for that. So it was cool to like, intermix and meet different types of people there. Now, flip side, go to Kumu. Yeah, I feel like Kumu is funny because I feel like it's like you're at home.
Yeah, right.
I'm just like, all right, you know what I mean? It's like I'm not full Filipino, I'm mestizo. It's kind of navigating the same thing. You know what I mean? It's the surprise,
Hmm.
oh, you're Filipino, you're this. And honestly, you can't even question now because my my everything is not half Filipino or half Filipino. So
Right.
it's like I already told you. You knew before I'd said anything.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like having that, I don't need to reaffirm my identity as if, well, I don't need to reaffirm my identity at all if I don't want to. But I'd
Mhm.
like to, and I don't need, we could skip the question. I just told you.
Sure.
I just introduced
Right.
myself as this. And actually, I'm going to keep it real too. I've changed my LinkedIn to half Filipino too. Because my thing
Mhm.
is like LinkedIn, everyone's it's professional. I'm like, I don't feel the need to be explaining everything. You see it from the moment you roll up on my professional page. And if you're not with it, then I probably don't want to work for you. So that's
Right.
just what it is.
Yeah. That's interesting because I never thought about that in terms of LinkedIn because LinkedIn is it's another social media site. And so it's like,
LinkedIn's crazy.
and yeah, and I hear all kinds of things about LinkedIn and like how people treat it and stuff because it kind of goes around the one of the like biggest employment no-nos, which is what do you look like? Like what
Yeah.
is your ethnicity? Because people have profile pictures, like people have, they can list whatever they want on their LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
it kind of circumnavigates those hiring laws that exist and about questions you can and can't ask. So, that's funny to me that you've like
Well,
changed your
no,
LinkedIn.
now that you like mentioned that too, what's real about that? Like, watch when you apply for jobs, they have that voluntary
Hmm.
form.
You can
Like,
choose to
no,
pick your
you
ethnicity.
choose, but that's like a double-edged sword. They know what they're doing because you are
Hmm.
voluntarily telling them stuff. So if you get a bad HR manager, you're already excluded because they saw that. It's crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Right.
I don't care. My thing is like my identity as a Filipino American will always intersect with work. And I'll be real too. I remember I was talking with my girlfriend about this too. And just for reference, she is white, but I was like, look, I can't. I'm looking for specifically a Filipino American therapist. There's like none in Pittsburgh. I'm just being open
Right.
about
There's
mental health.
zero.
We should be,
There's
yeah,
zero.
we should be more open about mental health, especially within the Asian community. So
Mhm.
I'm bringing this up. But I'm like, look, it's like I know sometimes there's a lot of work stuff that I've been through, and sometimes you just need to talk to some people, not just at my current job, just like every job, and everything compounds together when you're in survival mode. And I'm like, again, I can't, I can't just talk
Right.
to someone about work because there's a nuance of it. You can't explain to other people. You need to
Mhm.
talk to someone who just gets it. Like, I could sit here talk about work, but why am I working hard? Oh, it's because my mom said I had to work hard. We got to provide for the family. Why is it? She's Filipino. She's providing for the family. It's all layered together.
Yeah.
Me being at
Right.
work, and then I'm the only one here, and then unlayered, I'm mixed on top of it. So there's just so many different things. So it's like, yeah, can't be one thing without being the other. They're all married
Right.
together, and that's
For
where
sure.
I'm at with that.
Right. So, what kind of advice can you offer based on what you've seen and what you've experienced in your own quote unquote journeys in the social media space and the content production space? Like what do you think people should do more of, and like what in terms of when you are kind of looking around at what's around you, like what are you looking for and what do you define as like a best practice for somebody who's in this space, especially when it comes to the topics of representation and making sure you're not appropriating and trying to be as inclusive and as close to the needed levels of DEI as possible? Kind of how do you view that?
Yeah, I think within the fields that we're in, I think start with just DE and I. Just do your due diligence. Like that's all you really need to do. Look it up. If it feels like, oh, is this right? Just question if it's right or not. And don't be afraid to reach out and be like, hey, I'm putting this together. I just want to make sure this is right. Have a trusted team or allies or someone who could be like, yeah, that might not be right. It's great to have a pair of eyes on everything that you do. A lot of, again, everything comes down to writing, in my opinion, and it's just the basis of every single creative process, whether you do it unscripted or not. So that's where I would say with that when it comes to that. Honestly, if for some people like why y'all appropriating stuff? That's just my question. Like, come on.
Right.
Like what? Come on.
Like just don't.
Anyway,
Just stop.
yeah, just don't. Don't like
Right.
don't do that content creation stuff where it's like you're combining everything together. Like I'm not gonna sit here and talk about Raya, but like Southeast Asian, no, Filipino
Right.
background,
They're
but
they're
what?
different Southeast Asian cultures, you know.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I mean too. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
but more Filipinos relate to Encanto, but that's different. That's a different
Right.
story.
It's a whole different story for another day.
That's
We
a
can
whole
do a
different
whole
story,
other
but
episode. Yeah, a whole
just
other
on that,
episode on the what's it called? The
yeah,
intersectionality of
yeah.
Latinx and Spanish culture and
No,
Filipinos.
I know. I gotta introduce you to my friend Nicole. She's Mexican and Filipino, and she's
You
like,
know, we
"What
love
is
a
going
good
on?"
Mexicasian.
Yeah. um. But other stuff I would advise too. I think, especially being Asian or even Filipino, assert yourself. You know what I mean? Don't feel like
Right.
you're not enough because of this. Even if you feel like you're not enough, people don't know that. So I think a lot of it's like confidence. Even if you're faking it, just do what you have to do to get into the door or create that door for yourself. I would even say just do the work too. I think the thing that holds us back is taking the first step.
Yeah.
Because we think, oh, we're not going to be perfect. Look at all these people. They're doing this, and that. But they had to start somewhere too. Just do it. I remember I used to be terrified to sing in front of people. Now I do it on a Kumu cast with like, we get like over 1,000 people. We get thousands of people like throughout the weeks. And if we're collaborating, there's just a lot of people that end up on there. I'm like, okay, cool. That's just what we're doing now. And even content creation, I'm like, I don't know if I'm perfect. Oh, I just started with, let me take this photo. Let me try this on graphic design. Let me write this. First, I thought it was horrible. I look back at some of that stuff, it looks terrible because I'm like, I
Yeah.
didn't know what I was doing. But if I didn't
So you got to
start that,
start.
I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. And who knows where I'm gonna go later? You know what I mean? This is just the start of my career. And even if I'm working in the marketing PR world right now, I might not be here later. I might be doing something else creative. And I remember saying in one of my job interviews before, I think the core of what I do is storytelling. That's period what I do. How it's expressed, it's, subject to change. But what I like to do, whatever it is just storytell. Even if it's just me ghost writing someone's HR, like consulting stuff, whatever. Like, okay.
Right.
But it's telling a story and people are engaging with it. And that's what I love doing the most.
That's awesome.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Powell, co-host of the Oranges, Orange, or Browns podcast. Check us out anywhere you listen to podcasts. For all your Browns coverage, post-game, pre-game, anything you need Browns, you'll find it here on the Oranges, Orange, or Browns podcast.
Hi, my name is Sam Post, owner of Phenomwell CBD store and PhenomwellCBD.com. That's like phenomenal, PhenomwellCBD.com. Tune in where we talk with experts about how the amazing hemp plant can make a difference for people's health and well-being from the Press Play Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Alex Grubbs, and this is Producing While Asian.
So let's do a question's a little more fun. So talk to me about, or tell us kind of like 3 awesome memories or milestones that you have in your social media content creation life. So like, tell us about a moment that you don't think you would have ever kind of come upon that like you're going to remember for a long time in your adventures in Kumu and Clubhouse, because I know that most of these 2 platforms is you're directly connected with people that you might not be able to talk to normally, like influencers that, or not even influencers, just people who have really big roles at their companies, that you wouldn't be able to just like call up and talk to. Like these folks are floating in these universes. Like, so share with us some memories that you were like, like that was awesome. Like, I'm definitely excited that happened, or, or something that you're like, oh, wow, I never thought like I'd be able to connect with that person, things like that.
I think there's a bunch of different things. I think work wise, just put out there, like recently I put together one of these posts for one of our clients, and it got like over 3,000 reactions on LinkedIn. I was like, I did that. I wrote
That's
that. And I was just like, that is so awesome. And I know the client was so happy about it too. They're like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting. It's like 3,000 reactions, over 200 comments, over 100,000 views. And I was even like, oh my God, I finally did it. I went viral on LinkedIn, even though it wasn't me, it was my client, but it was really awesome to be able to do that. And for them too, because it's like, it's very special for them because it's like, we
Mhm.
are buying the service and we're getting our results back for it. So I thought that was awesome. Outside of work, into like Clubhouse. I think Clubhouse is amazing for what it was when I was on it last year. I met so many people who have become really good friends, and they're across the board doing other stuff. It's like my one friend is a baker. I met like a journalist in Alaska who's Filipino. You know, my one friend is a voice actor. We're doing stuff with Netflix. I know like a Emmy award nominated producer. I know just people doing stuff in the nonprofit space. Or they're just so many different people with so many different accolades in their own rights. It's so cool to connect with other Filipino Americans and even just Filipinos abroad, of course, but to be able to talk about our shared experience and finally being like, well, we've all felt like this. And here are these people who are across the country. And it's like they were experiencing the same stuff, give or take. I think that was dope. And some of these people are like genuinely my friends. Like I talk to them every day, every time I'm in Los Angeles, because that's where everyone kind of congregates, even though everyone's spread out, meet up with them in New York too. Every time I'm in New York, I'm like, hey guys, let's meet up. Let's do this. And it's not even just like, oh, I met you on an app. It doesn't even feel like it. It's like I know their lives, they know my life. It's like I have been friends with them for years. And I think my moment, I remember, I think it was back in June. We were just, it was like a bunch of us just hanging out. We are just at the Santa Monica Pier, just walking around. I'm like, we're actually doing this. This is cool.
Yeah.
It's like we've created all this content together and we've never met each other. And here we are
Mhm.
just hanging out here. I thought that was awesome. And for Kumu, I would say too, being involved with that Filipino network has just been opened my eyes. It's like again connecting with the folks at One Down and Kumu USA. I've been following One Down forever, and just to be like, oh, and I do just shout out to Leo because he's the same age as me. I didn't even know that, and he's out here
Yeah.
doing like literally the work for our community and what representation means across the board, which I think is dope. Him and his team. But it isn't even just that. It's just like being on a stream. I'm like, there's like 4,000 people that were in here. What am I doing right now?
Right.
I thought that was like crazy. And I remember we kicked off our first Sing Me to Sleep on there, and like we got it's over 1,000 people tuned in for that. And I was like, wow, like this is our first stream, and in our first Am I Filipino, the AX enough on there too. It got over 1,000 people. I was like, look at us, and we did it off the One Down Kumu, and I was like, who would have ever thought like our worlds collided that way? And I think it's dope. And I will add another thing too. Being on a bunch of my like friends' podcasts have been amazing. My friend Layla Jerusalem with Partially Pinoy, my friend Nicolette Guyen, she's doing a lot of different podcast stuff. She's awesome. My friend Adrian Pangilinan and his podcast. There's so many different stuff that I've been like hopping between, and they're genuinely friends of mine. But it's so cool to be able to just like, and I'm on yours now. I think it's so
Yeah, here
dope.
we are.
Yeah, it's so great to just talk to fellow Filipino Americans about the creative stuff or just life in general and how we're
Yeah.
navigating it with each other.
So now that the world is kind of coming into what we hope is an endemic period,
Yeah.
what do you feel is next for these platforms? Now that like people are able to start congregating again and seeing each other in person, what do you believe are the next steps for these platforms, and what does content creation look like moving forward now that we're not all siloed away from each other anymore, or at least not as much as we used to be?
I would say Clubhouse, at least within the Filipino American space, like, plummeted real easy. And it's not even just there, across the board, and even metrics. It fell because everyone's like, we're back in person, we're going back into the office, we're going, to conferences, we're doing all that stuff. And it's easier when you're just at home, You know what I mean? You're like, all right, I'm just gonna jump on and listen during the day. We can't do that anymore because we're interacting with people. We don't want to. We have stuff to do. We're going back and forth in the office, not in like one centralized place all day. There's so many different things going on within that space. I think it still has a lot of value. I think, but you have to be more deliberate on what you're doing. You have to do more, I guess, advertising, whether that's organic or paid, to get people to come to your specific room or your specific talk, whatever you're doing. That's 100% key for that. I could say the same thing with Kumu too. But the thing is with Kumu, what I like more about Kumu than Clubhouse is you can turn the camera on. You can interact with people, and there's a chat and comment section at the bottom. So even though it's an app where it's like, oh, people could just hop on and chill and do stuff, there's a lot of different content that could be there because it's live streams. I can literally tune in and watch these people. But again, there's a level of like advertising that's good. We have to post about our show. We have to have it posted on the official Instagram. We have to do all these different things to make sure people know, hey, come here. We have to schedule it so people could see like when the live stream's gonna happen. There's so many different things that you have to do. And you can't just be like, oh, hey, I'm just gonna do this. You can, but if you're looking for high engagement, you're not gonna get anywhere with it. You have to put it out there for people to see so they can prioritize that time. Whereas last year, I randomly create a room and then there's like 50 people in here. We're discussing this stuff. You can't do that on the fly. And if you do, you're lucky in some moments. If it's like timely news or drama or something like that. I remember it started out again, Sing Me to Sleep. We were just like, all right, we're bored. And that's how it started out.
Right.
With no advertising, nothing. We're just like, all right, let's do it. And then all of a sudden we're like, there's like 100 people just coming like steadily throughout the night. And I was like, probably over 500 people throughout the night. And I'm like, what are we doing?
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Like, what's going on
that's
here?
Great.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
cool. That's really, because I just was so curious about like, well, what's going to happen now that like we're all interacting with each other? So that all makes a lot of sense. So talk to our audience about kind of now, what shows on these platforms are you now producing with these online friends that you've gained over the last 2 years, and kind of talk to us about like what your projects are right now and then how people can be in touch with you, because part of this podcast is making sure that we solve that stupid problem that you mentioned where like a bunch of people of color like we can't find people, like, so I do want you to talk about how people can reach you too on here publicly. So talk to us about your projects and talk to us about how people can reach out and find you and work with you too.
Yeah, so on Kumu, USA at least, Sing Me to Sleep with my friends King and Zasha. We have a bunch of different moderators like Michael Whitty and Anthony Ronco, sorry. I got his last name wrong. He's going to kill me for that. Yeah, and just a bunch of different people. We have our super fans too. I just want to give a shout out to like Tita Cruz. She's with us every weekend.
Tita Cruz.
Krista, Mara, our boy Gerald. Like they're literally here when I mean Tita Cruz literally pops up and she just sings. It's like Filipino karaoke, but she sings so well that it's just like
awesome.
It's both at the same time. I'm so happy she comes like with us. And even a shout out to Astrologic. Sharito is part of it. It's a queer like neo soul group in like the Bay Area, and they just popped in, and I love them to death. It's so great that you can connect with people like that. And even Andre, he was on The Voice in the Philippines. He's dope too. He just popped in. I don't even know how we connected. He just popped in, started singing, and we're like, oh, that's that's spam. You know what I'm saying? So they're every Sunday at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Monday, 11 a.m. Filipino time. So just come and join us. It's so cool. You probably see it posted because it's all over my social media half the time, from the Sing Me to Sleep Kumu page. We have Kumu USA that will put it on their stuff. So definitely check that out. And every other Thursday, we do Am I Filipino AX and Up on Kumu USA. Around the same time, like 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Different topics. We just cycle through and talk about what's going on. We talked about, language, our first stream. We talked about, on Kumu at least. The second one, we talked about love. We just talked about the similarities between the Black community and the Filipino community in the U.S. more specifically. It was just a cool room. It was very lighthearted. We were just talking with each other and vibing and even the people who are Black and Filipino, and what that experience was like for them. And we wanted to do that for Black History Month to show the significance, because Black history is interwoven. Well, Filipino history is interwoven with Black history in the U.S. 100%.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it was a cool room. Catch us there. More conversations to come across the board. We're always trying to look for new ideas and more people to collaborate with on both. So it'd be cool for anyone who wants to get involved, because Kumu USA is Filipino as hell, and I love it. But there's so many other people who aren't Filipino on there, which are amazing to like meet too. And just in regular life, yo, honestly though, we need y'all to roll up to the Filipino American Association of Pittsburgh events at the Philippine Center in West Mifflin, Pennsylvania. And that's back,
Right.
period. Please come. I'll take a photo of you, learn Tini Kling. If you don't know what Tini Kling is, you will. And we'll just vibe. I feel like we're in our workshop from last week. Oh, just give people
Right.
what's your 30 second
Which is 30-second
pitch?
speech, or like
elevator
board
pitch.
development moment.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
we're making West Mifflin happen. That's
I
what
know.
we're doing.
I don't know about I don't know about all that. Shout out to y'all in West Mifflin though. That's all I'm gonna say. But that's definitely something. And there's always some smaller projects in the works. So
And then
just
you,
follow me.
where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Find me
Yeah.
on Instagram and Twitter as half Filipino, but on these and Clubhouse, but on Kumu, the half Filipino. It's so hard. People like snatch that. It's so crazy. It took
Sure
me like
do.
a couple years to get half Filipino on Instagram because it was the half. But I gotta wait till these people delete these accounts, and I watch like a hawk because
Check
they
every
can become
day.
inactive. I literally do. I'm like, when is this person gonna get rid of this name so I could take it because I deserve it?
It's
'Cause
you
I'm
start
like,
you turn into the person who wants to buy people's handles to be like, I'm gonna
Oh my
buy you
God.
off of this handle.
I would trademark. No, someone will probably trademark it before I do. To be honest, no, I don't
We don't
own
want to
it.
give anybody any ideas.
No ideas.
Gotcha. Well, do you have any parting words for anybody that might be thinking about jumping into content producing, or being a little bit more active on social media? Last parting words, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, if you are Asian or Filipino and trying to break into this space, just do it. You know what I mean? We are told by our parents way too many times, be a doctor, be a nurse, be an engineer. Screw that. We need people to be in this field, 100%. Because if we're not going to write our stories, someone else is going to write our stories for us, and they're going to get it 100% wrong, as they always do. And we see it across the board. Who better to tell our stories than us? Like, seriously.
Exactly.
We're the best people
You're
to
right.
do it. And I think just take it in, be very cognizant of your surroundings when you're going in it. It's not going to be easy. It won't be easy.
Yeah.
Have a good support system, not have people around you that aren't there to use you. They want to be there for your success. It's easy to get caught up with people who just care about whatever gain they get, and they don't care about what you're going to get out of it. So I think that's incredibly important. And then again, just do it. Live your life. If you're going to tight budget it, but at least start it. Because once you start it, it's just going to open your world and open the world around you, and you're not going to realize how many people you're going to affect and touch. Because sometimes I forget. Because I feel like a small person and everything, and I'm like, wow, look at all this stuff we're doing for our community in so many different facets. And I'll just say one more thing, kind of an anecdote. One of the people I met on Clubhouse, her name is Kat. She messaged me privately after so many of the conversations we had on Clubhouse, where she was a bystander or in the conversation. And she said, "Thank you for having your rooms. I now have the confidence to speak out about alcoholism in the Filipino community, and I want to help other Filipinos navigate that space." And I'm like, what? Were you just coming up? Like, I think about this all the time, and I'm so happy that I was there to help facilitate a space where someone was comfortable enough to really jump into their own and seize what they want to do, especially for someone who is part of our community. I think that's awesome, and
Right.
that's what we should be doing. It's not a competition. We should be empowering each other.
Yeah. And that just kind of points to what you're saying about like, just do it. Like, just do it, because you don't know who's going to reach out to you or who's going to be listening, or, things like that. Like, don't prejudge your actions before you even do it, because like, you can't tell what'll happen until you try, right? So I think there's something to be said about just like having the kind of, for lack of a better phrase, having the guts to just do it. And like the worst that can happen is what your room doesn't, it's not as popular, or like you ask a question and somebody says no. I think everything is worth trying at least once, right? So
yeah, people judge, and you kind of have to accept it. People are going to judge, but what are they going to say when you're out here vibing and successful? Be like, you should have been there for me when I was nothing in this space. Right. And that's how I feel. It's like, hey, like when I was starting out, but now the accolades are here. You want to be part of it. That's not how we do it. You know what I mean? But we shouldn't judge. There's a lot of judgment in our community. We need to stop doing that. And we should just embrace each other. And again, I feel like it's always projected jealousy. That's how it is.
Right.
And that's not what we should be doing. We should be embracing each other and being here for each other. Because again, if we're not going to be here for each other, who's going to do it? Not going to be anybody else. So we kind of have to do it. We have to do it. We always have to do it. And that's just what we should be doing. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I love that. And, that's where Producing Well Asian is at. We're currently in season 2. And if you look back, it's already a vibrant community of so many different AAPI people that are all different parts of, the industry or different industries and producing in different ways. And so thank you so much, Alex, for being on this episode today. And it was like fascinating to hear all of your thoughts. And I know your perspective from the marketing side and the media relations side and kind of in the social media sphere is going to be so awesome for so many people out there listening to this podcast, because I know you can listen to theater people for a while, but I think it's great to have different perspectives in terms of the word producer and the concept of what producing is, because there's no one definition of it. So just know you're welcome to come back here anytime. If there's anything you want to promote later in the future, we'll have more episodes, more conversations with different folks, because I know that there are plenty of former guests and future guests that would love to connect with you on whatever it may be. So definitely expect to be back on in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. Everyone, shower love to Don Mike. And whenever we have these random reality TV shows that we're not going to disclose the concepts,
we won't talk about that.
Remember, it started years ago, but it's going to happen one day.
For sure. All right, we'll see you next time, Alex.
All right, thanks. See ya.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Producing While Asian podcast. Our theme song was created by Luckstock. We're produced by Press Play Podcast, and the show is edited by Michael Santos Sandoval. If you have a moment, please leave a rating and a review, and send any ideas you have to producingwhileasian@gmail.com. To follow us, stay updated, or to read our blog, visit www.producingwhileasian.com.